Are you racist?
I am the least racist person that you have ever met.
I am the least racist person.
They're bringing drugs.
I don't care if the judge is Mexican or not.
They're bringing crime.
So I don't care about Mexican.
They're rapists.
He's not from Mexico.
In my opinion,
he's from Indiana.
He's Mexican heritage, and he's very proud of it.
And some, I assume, are good people.
If it were a Muslim judge, would you also feel like they wouldn't be able to treat you fairly?
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims.
It's possible, yes. Yeah, that would be possible, absolutely. It's really very curious as to what's going on with our president. Why doesn't he show the birth certificate? Maybe it says he's a Muslim.
Oh, look at my African American over here. Look at him.
I have a great relationship with the blacks.
Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I've always had a great relationship with the blacks.
I love these guys. Look at these guys. Blacks for Trump. I love you.
A well-educated black has a tremendous advantage over a well-educated white. If I was starting off today, I would love to be a well-educated black.
How many of these people are even Indians to begin with? Because I've looked at them, and I have to tell you something, they don't look like Indians to me.
They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians.
Although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you.
Negotiating with China. They say, we want deal. He'd jump out of the seat.
I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I didn't even know he endorsed me. White supremacy or white supremacist. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. All right, I disavow, okay?
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now?
What's going on in Chicago?
He's fired. He's fired!
What the hell is going on?
Of course I hate these people. And let's all hate these people, because maybe hate is what we need. Maybe hate is what we need. Hate is what we need.
This is Intercepted. I'm Jeremy Scahill, coming to you from the offices of The Intercept in New York City, and this is episode 40 of Intercepted.
That we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor.
The Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday is an important reminder that one of the defining characteristics of the American exceptionalism that Democratic and Republican politicians constantly mention is selective amnesia combined with historical revisionism. Dr. King, as he is celebrated in the U.S. by the majority of politicians and institutions, would be unrecognizable to King himself. King was a militant opponent of U.S. wars and militarism.
But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems. to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government.
Dr. King was a fierce advocate for the poor, the forgotten, the victims of the fabled American success story celebrated by its white beneficiaries. He repeatedly risked his life confronting not just racist policies or segregation, but the white supremacy ingrained in U.S. society to this very day. But King the radical, the anti-imperialist, the anti-racist, is not the King that's celebrated today.
The problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
The real Martin Luther King Jr., the King who J. Edgar Hoover tried to blackmail, wiretapped, and told King to kill himself, the King who described himself as a democratic socialist who believed in redistribution of wealth, the King who was assassinated, would today undoubtedly be labeled a black identity terrorist and shunned by the Republicans and Democrats alike for being too radical and anti-American. When King was gunned down, his popularity was at an all-time low. He had been largely abandoned by his friends in the civil rights movement and was regularly denounced in the papers and on radio and TV for being too radical.
Dr. King, former President Truman, was quoted by the AP as saying that the march from Selma, and this was his word, was silly and can't accomplish a darn thing except to attract attention. Now, there have been 2 murders, many beatings, and a federal expenditure for troops of about $300,000. Would you say that what the march accomplished was worth that cost?
Perhaps it's fitting that days before the King holiday, we learn that Donald Trump had called black nations shitholes or shithouses. It doesn't matter which. We see you, Trump. The Democrats expressed their outrage that the president would say such a thing, and Trump's defenders say it's the truth regardless of what anyone thinks of his language. But here's what the Democrats and Republicans, and certainly Trump himself, will never, ever talk about: the U.S. role in destabilizing and mercilessly punishing the countries whose citizens Trump wants banned from coming to the U.S. or having protective status.
We will suspend the Syrian refugee program, have no choice. And we will keep radical Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country, believe me.
Take Haiti, the first black republic in the world, the first country in the Western Hemisphere to abolish slavery, a country consistently targeted by violent anti-democratic U.S. policy ever since. Why don't we ever talk about the support that Ronald Reagan offered to the brutal dictatorship of Baby Doc, or how George H.W. Bush and the CIA unleashed murderous death squads in an effort to stop the democratic election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, only to facilitate his overthrow in a brutal coup after Aristide won. Why don't we talk about how Bill Clinton would only allow Aristide to return to Haiti if he agreed not to seek re-election, or the inhumane way that Clinton treated Haitians fleeing their country and warehoused them at the Guantanamo prison in appalling conditions before George Bush turned it into an illegal gulag for suspected terrorists.
I want to thank our partners in the hemisphere. When the United States decided that if necessary we would use force to remove the military regime and to restore President Aristide and democracy, I was so determined that no one would think we were trying to revive any hemispheric imperialism.
Why don't we discuss the George W. Bush administration once again supporting the overthrow of Haiti's democratically elected government in 2004, or the neoliberal economic policies pushed by the Clinton Global Fund and the Obama administration, or the story of how President Obama backed a corrupt government in Haiti as it used corruption and anti-democratic tactics in an effort to keep power.
It's a great pleasure to welcome President Martelly of Haiti to the Oval Office. Our two countries really brought about the trend towards independence in the Western Hemisphere.
No Democrats or Republicans ever want to talk about this history. Yes, Donald Trump is a racist, a horrid, overt, shameless racist. But let's be honest, U.S. policy toward Haiti has always been racist. Trump should be condemned for what he said, but so too should all U.S. presidents, going back well over a century, who have ravaged Haiti in defense of corporate profits and the elite. On Martin Luther King Day, MSNBC repeatedly played a clip of Ronald Reagan denouncing the use of racial epithets in a speech that Reagan gave on King's birthday. And they contrasted that Reagan speech to Trump's shithole or shithouse comments.
As recent unfortunate events have demonstrated, we cannot be complacent about racism and bigotry. And I would challenge all of you to pledge yourselves to building an America where incidents of racial hatred do not happen because racism has been banned not just from the law books, but from the hearts of the people.
So there you have it. 2 presidents, 2 Republicans, 2 men claiming to be conservatives, and yet a great divide between race, even among 2 conservative Republican presidents. But after all these decades of progress, here we find ourselves with a reactionary, and yes, some would say, a racist president.
The violent irony here, of course, is that Reagan is directly responsible for a tremendous amount of death and destruction in Haiti. And that little fact was not mentioned at all, because history doesn't matter to these people. Only empty platitudes gain bipartisan praise. Now, I could also talk about the role the U.S. has played in destroying Somalia and other African nations whose citizens Trump believes should be banned from coming to America. And it isn't just Haiti and African nations. Tens of thousands of people in El Salvador were mercilessly murdered, tortured, raped in the 1980s as Reagan poured U.S. weapons, training, and funding to a heinous military junta. That country has never fully recovered from what the U.S. did to it over a sustained period of time. Oh, and it wasn't just Salvadoran civilians who paid the price. Forces backed by Washington raped and murdered 4 American churchwomen. Archbishop Oscar Romero was shot dead as he performed Mass. His killer was trained by the U.S. 6 Jesuit priests were murdered in their home by paramilitaries backed by the U.S.
The priests were shown no mercy. During the night, gunmen invaded their dormitory, clubbed them, dragged them out to a lawn, and shot them. 2 women caretakers were also murdered.
You see, no one wants to discuss this history when we try to understand why El Salvador faces the violence and poverty that make people want to flee. So yes, we should all be outraged at Trump's racist words and his racist policies. They're dangerous and vile, but they don't exist in a vacuum. It's the U.S. that's been the shithole or the shithouse in countries the world over. It's a legacy of racism built by Democrats and Republicans. And Donald Trump is a fitting person to now represent that legacy because his overt racist rhetoric matches this racist legacy that no one ever wants to talk about. Okay, let's get on with the show.